these are my own lectures, okay? Given by me. All right? Understand,
Okay.
boys?
Yes, sir.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In today's lecture, we are going to learn about basically respiration. Can you guys hear the sound?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right. And then we'll be discussing about the difference between the aerobic and anaerobic respiration, and we'll be talking a little bit about the breathing. Now first, let's talk about respiration. Now, respiration, it's not a physical process. Many of the people, they confuse the respiration with physical process, which is inhaling and exhaling, which is actually the breathing process. Respiration is a chemical process in which the breakdown of food takes place. So if I write the proper definition of respiration, it will be breakdown of food or glucose to produce energy. So when the breakdown of food takes place, now this breakdown is actually a chemical process, it's not a physical process. That is why the respiration, it is a chemical process. So it should not be confused with the other process which is called breathing. Now the second thing which we can talk about, that is breathing. Now, as I just told earlier, that breathing, it is a mechanical process. And in this, the two processes that involve, they are inhaling and exhaling. Now, if we talk more about the respiration, then we can represent respiration simply with the help of an equation. Now we can represent it both in word equation form and in the chemical equation form. If I represent it in the word equation form, we will simply say that glucose, it joins with oxygen and then it breaks down into water plus carbon dioxide plus energy. Now in this equation, the E stands for energy. Now we can also represent the same equation in the chemical form, and we can call it chemical equation. Now in biology, whenever we represent a chemical equation, we always represent it in the balanced form. So what happens, that one molecule of glucose, C6H12O6, joins with 6 molecules of oxygen, and then this molecule of glucose, it breaks down into 6 molecules of water plus 6 molecules of carbon dioxide, and energy is released. Again, in this equation, the E stands for energy which is produced during this chemical process. So this is the general idea about the respiration, that it is the breakdown of food or the glucose to produce energy. Now, respiration, it is basically of two types. If I mention respiration over here, it is of two types. One type of respiration, it is called as aerobic respiration. And second type of respiration is called as anaerobic respiration. Now, during the anaerobic respiration, the oxygen is used to break down glucose. To break down food or glucose, while during anaerobic respiration, there is no use of oxygen. No use of oxygen to break down food or glucose. Another very important difference, that during this a lot of energy is produced, while during the anaerobic respiration very little amount of energy is produced. Now, other than these differences, on the organism level, there are differences between the anaerobic respiration. And remember one thing, that aerobic respiration is same in all the organisms. Now, when I'm saying that it is same in all organisms, then I'm talking about all the 5 kingdoms which you have learned about, like bacteria, protist, fungus, you can also call it fungi, plants, and animals. So we start from the simplest and we go to the most complex organisms. The aerobic respiration in all of them is exactly same. And during the aerobic respiration, simply what will happen, that one molecule of glucose, let me mention over here, C6H12O6, it will join with 6 molecules of glucose, with 6 molecules of oxygen, and it will break down into 6 molecules of carbon dioxide plus 6 molecules of water plus energy will be released. But this anaerobic respiration, it is different in different kind of organisms. Now let's discuss about the anaerobic respiration in a little bit more detail. Now, anaerobic respiration, again, it comprises into two categories on the types of organisms and type of product produced during the anaerobic chemical reaction. Now, the anaerobic respiration, it is same in bacteria and animals. And on the other hand, this anaerobic respiration, it is same in fungi and plants. In both of these, the amount of energy produced will be same, but there are chemical differences. Now, what happens in bacteria and animals? In bacteria and animals, the one molecule of glucose, when it breaks down in the absence of oxygen, it breaks down into two molecules of lactic acid. Now, if you guys remember, the glucose, it is a 6-carbon molecule, and lactic acid is a 3-carbon molecule. So 3 2s are 6. So on the each side of the chemical equation, the number of carbon atoms, they become equal. With this lactic acid, there is production of small amount of energy. Now, this glucose does not directly change into lactic acid. It does change into pyruvic acid before, but we are not going into that detail because that detail is not in the O-level syllabus. That detail is in A-level syllabus. Now, we can represent this in the chemical form as well, that there is this C6H12O6. When it breaks down into two molecules of lactic acid, so you just simply have the formula plus there is small amount of energy. Another thing which you observe, that during this lactic acid fermentation or during the anaerobic respiration in bacteria and animals, there is no production of carbon dioxide. Now here, the differences come now between the fungi and the plants. Now let's discuss anaerobic respiration in fungi and plants. Again, there is one glucose molecule which will break down in the absence of oxygen in fungi and plants. When it will break down, it will form two molecules of alcohol plus two molecules of carbon dioxide. Now I'm writing carbon dioxide below the chemical equation because of the absence of the space over there, but when you guys will write, you will write in a straight chain. Now, again, one more thing which I will mention, which is similar in both aerobic and anaerobic respiration, that there will be small amount of energy produced. Now, I can also mention this in the form of chemical equation, that there is one molecule of glucose C6H12O6. When it will break down in the absence of oxygen, it will form two molecules of ethyl alcohol plus two molecules of carbon dioxide and small amount of energy. Now, as you can simply see, that in this chemical reaction that there is production of two molecules of carbon dioxide. And if you look at both sides of the chemical equation, this chemical equation is balanced. So what do we mention? That the difference between both of them, another difference, that is there is production of carbon dioxide. So these are the basic differences between the anaerobic respiration that is taking place in bacteria and animals, which is similar, and on the other hand in fungi and plants, which is similar. Now, if we talk about just fungi, when the anaerobic respiration takes place in fungi, it's simply also sometimes mentioned as fermentation. Now, it is also sometimes mentioned as alcoholic fermentation, because in this there is production of alcohol, while in bacteria and animals when anaerobic respiration takes place, it is sometimes referred as lactic acid fermentation. So we conclude our lecture over here. Again, just quick review of the differences between the anaerobic respiration, that in bacteria and animals when the glucose breaks down in the absence of oxygen, we get two molecules of lactic acid and small amount of energy, and there is no production of carbon dioxide. While when the fungi and plants, in them anaerobic respiration takes place, which is also called as alcoholic fermentation, glucose breaks down into two molecules of alcohol and two molecules of carbon dioxide and small amount of energy, and there is production of carbon dioxide. So let's see you in next lecture. Thank you. Another interesting fact is that around of the breathing system. Now, for that purpose, we guys have to pay attention how to draw the diagram. Now, how to draw the breathing system. For that purpose, first of all, we guys have to draw a small face. After drawing that, just draw a line like this, and then draw a line like this. Over here, just draw a structure like this, and then afterwards draw or a bifurcation in the tube which we have already drawn. Now after drawing the bifurcation, draw two lines on the each side, and these lines should be at the equal size or at the equal level from the both sides. The question is why they should be at the equal level or equal size, because in this way it will help us to draw these lungs in equal size or almost equal size. Now I have drawn this lung over here. Now after that, we have to draw this, and then in next step we draw this over here and this over here, and I draw this over here. What are these things? When I will label, I will explain them step by step. Next thing, what we should draw, just a little bit like this over here. Now let's label the diagram and draw further structures while labeling the diagram. Now, this is the nose in the breathing system, and this one is the nostril. Now we have two nostrils, then this opening is the mouth, then this tube is called as trachea or the windpipe. Behind the windpipe over here we have the esophagus, as we are not discussing the digestive system, so I'm not drawing the digestive system, but for your understanding I just drew the esophagus. Now this structure over here, it is called as epiglottis. Now this epiglottis, it helps in preventing the entry of the food particles or water or any liquid which we are drinking going into our breathing system or into our trachea. Then this structure over here, this is called as larynx. It is also called as voice box. The question is, why is it called as voice box? The answer is very simple, because over here we have special membranes which are called as vocal cords, which help us in talking or producing sound simple way. This larynx or voice box, it is also sometimes referred as Adam's apple. Now there is another question, that why is this referred as Adam's apple? Now answer is very simple. The bone which is present in the larynx, it has the shape of an apple. So that is why it is called as Adam's apple. And the first person or the first human being on the face of the earth, Hazrat Adam alayhi salam, he had this Adam's apple or this bone. That is why it is called as Adam's apple. Another thing, that in young boys or girls up till the age of 18 or up till the age until they reach the puberty, this Adam's apple, it is, or this bone, it is a cartilage. Now there is difference between a cartilage and a bone, but when a person reaches to the puberty or the 18 years of the age, at that time this cartilage, it is replaced and it changes into a bone. Then after that, this larynx, this structure, this pipe, it is called as trachea, or in simple words it is also referred as windpipe, because this is the place from where the air enters inside the lungs. Now the interesting fact, that inside this trachea there are incomplete C-shaped ring of the cartilage. Now again, I just mentioned few moments ago that the cartilage and bone, they are totally two different structures. When you guys will go to the A levels, then you will learn the difference between the cartilage and the bone. So this is a C-shaped cartilage ring. Let me label it over here. Now, the job of these C-shaped cartilage rings is that they do not let the trachea to collapse. If there is no C-shaped rings of the cartilage over here, then while we are exhaling at that time, the trachea, it can collapse, but the C-shaped rings, they help in keeping the trachea open so that there is no trouble in inhaling and exhaling. In next step, what happens that this trachea, it divides or bifurcates into two tubes. Now the singular or the single of this is called as bronchus, and plural is called as bronchi. Then what happens that each bronchus, it enters inside the lungs and it further divides into more smaller tubes. Now we have two lungs, right lung and the left lung. So what happens that these tubes, they further divide into smaller and smaller tubes. There is more detail about it, but that detail is in A levels, so we are not discussing over here. Now these tubes, they are called as bronchioles. Now these tubes, they are mentioned as bronchioles. Let me label this with the black because I want to use the red for another purpose. So these are called as bronchioles. Now another thing, that this one is the right lung, now during the lecture of, and this one is the left lung, during the lecture of the heart diagram, I have taught you that we always label the organs according to their real-time position. Now if I place this diagram in front of my chest or opposite to my chest, now this will be the right lung and this one will be the left lung. Now interestingly, why did I draw this line and this line? To show one thing, that the right lung, it contains 3 lobes, or it contains the 3 portions, and I drew over here the single or one line and dividing it into 2 portions, representing that the left lung, it contains only 2 lobes. Another thing, that in this lung over here, I drew a depression towards the inside. Now this depression, it is called as hilum. Now this depression is actually made into the left lung to give space to the apex of the heart. Now on this corner, I'm just going to draw a small heart over here, which is like this. So this portion of the heart, this is called as apex of heart. To give position or space to the apex of the heart, there is a groove or depression into the left lung. Next thing which we are going to discuss, that each bronchiole then ends up into small pouch-like structures, and I'm drawing these pouch-like structures with the red color so that we can differentiate. Now remember one thing, that in each lung there are about 30 million of these pouch-like structures. Now these pouch-like structures, they are called as alveoli. In some books, the pronunciation is mentioned as alveoli, but the most acceptable pronunciation is alveoli, and singular is called as alveolus. Now, another interesting fact is that around the both lungs, there is a very thin membrane which I am representing with the green color. membrane which is present around the lungs, this membrane, it is called as pleural membrane. Now, in between the pleural membrane and the lungs, there is a liquid, and this liquid is called as pleural fluid. The question is, why there is a liquid in between the pleural membrane and pleural fluid? Now, this liquid, which is pleural fluid, it reduces the friction while the lungs of our body, they are inflating and deflating. Now, remember one thing, I use these words of inflating and deflating categorically. Why? Because our lungs, they do not have the capability of contracting and relaxing. They cannot contract and relax. They just can inflate like a balloon, and they can just deflate like a balloon. So whenever our lungs, they are inflating and deflating, so during that time they can rub with the other organs around them, like lungs, like
Okay, boys. So these videos, were they useful or not?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. They were
Yes,
good.
sir.
I will explain, inshallah, these topics again in the class. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Okay, boys. See you guys, inshallah, in
Okay,
next
sir.
class. Take
Okay,
care
sir.
and Allah Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz, sir.
Allah Hafiz, sir.
Allah Hafiz.